as you may recall, the global study deals with a variety of settings in which children are deprived of liberty. Our focus here is on the criminal justice context, which means children in police custody, in pre-trial detention in prison, children suspected or convicted of having committed an offense. One of the key strengths of the global study is that it's built on a human rights approach. More specifically, starting point for any discussion about detention of children should always be their rights under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Most importantly, of course, the child right to personal liberty. Article 37 of the CRC requires detention to be lawful, not arbitrary, and above all, only a measure of last resort and for the shortest appropriate period of time. This means if a child is suspected of having committed an offense, the first reaction should not be put him/her into jail, then let's start further investigation, or someone has stolen something and the judge just passes a prison sentence. No, instead, first consideration should always be a case-by-case comprehensive assessment of the situations, the interest at stake, including security concerns, and consideration of non-custodial options in the first place, and then take a decision. Next to the universal child rights standards, a broad range of more specific standards in the field of criminal justice have been adopted, including the so-called Havana Rules for the Protection of Juveniles Deprived of their Liberty of 1990, reconfirming such principles of last resort in shortest period of time. However, the global study reveals that despite such fundamental principles and formal commitments by states, there is huge diversity and variety across the world in terms of implementation. Societies have found various justifications for criminalizing conduct of children and putting them into prison. So it's striking to see that, as the global study reveals, at least 410,000 children in the world are in pre-trial detention or imprisoned every year, and up to 250,000 on any given day. Only 6%, interestingly, of those imprisoned and in detention are girls. Imprisonment rates range from 4 children out of 100,000 in sub-Saharan Africa and 5 children in Western Europe to 56 in North America. In terms of rather surprising findings, we note these quite striking discrepancies, not following a north-south divide, for example. Furthermore, life sentences, despite their explicit prohibition, remain still legal in 67 countries. Pre-trial detention of children may last up to 4 years, sometimes even without the maximum time limit set. Nevertheless, it's quite clear that we encountered several difficulties in getting these data through our data collection process. There might have been conceptual issues with the definition of deprivation of liberty, different legal regimes, state responsibilities and the political will to collect that kind of specific data. Generally, in the context of children, they are often overlooked in statistics. There is also an aspect of poor monitoring and accountability for data collection. In relation to what the situation in detention actually looks like, the study has highlighted specifically responses also from children who have complained about conditions like overcrowding, lack of meaningful activities, access to education, food, the lack of information, and lack of contact to the outside. Furthermore, violence still is a major concern in detention, despite calls for banning e.g. corporal punishment and other violent means of disciplining already in the previous UN study on violence against children of 2006, 13 years ago. What are the consequences for children of all these situations? Of course, they are manifold. On a personal level, there is immediately the limitation of movement, small space, feelings of isolation, group dynamics, bullying and other forms of violence. There's a health impact. There's the separation from the trusted family members, from friends, the loss of social networks, of support networks. There is the interruption of educational careers of young people, and there is the stigma and the negative impact on future socialization, job opportunities, etc. after experiences of detention. And all of this happens at a critical time of a person's personal development in terms of the biological development, the social development. You can find further information also in the separate video on the health impacts, neuroscientific findings in this regard. So there's definitely good reason to keep children away from detention as much as possible, and good reason not to treat children just as adults.
Why are children deprived of liberty, and how can this be prevented? What is particularly concerning is the totally inadequate response to child offending worldwide. Children in conflict with the law are all too often seen as a threat and risk. This leads to excessive criminalization of children's behavior. The average minimum age of criminal responsibility in the world is far below the minimum standard of 14 years required by the Child Rights Committee. And it is very regrettable that some countries have even lowered or considered lowering the minimum age of criminal responsibility in the past years. Many countries criminalize children for behavior that is not criminalized for adults. Such status offenses range from truancy, running away from home, underage drinking, curfew violations, consensual sexual activity between teenagers, or so-called disobedient or disruptive behaviors. Repressive approaches in law and harsh sentencing disproportionately affect children coming from the poorest and most marginalized groups of society, and at particular risk, such as children living or working on the street. Moreover, these approaches are ineffective to deal with the root causes of crime, but rather worsen the situation, leading to greater use of detention and increasing reoffending. It is shocking to see that the great amount of evidence on how child offending and deprivation of liberty can be prevented is often ignored. The global study shows that a way to escape the vicious cycle is to prevent the contact of children with the criminal justice system in the first place, by decriminalization and depenalization, investing in prevention policies, and ensuring that children are dealt with adequate protection channels. We were surprised to see how many countries already have specialized criminal justice systems and child protection systems in place, but how ineffectively they often appear to prevent deprivation of liberty. At the same time, we were highly encouraged by the many positive practices to prevent deprivation of liberty and protection of children that should guide necessary reforms. Several countries have well-trained police officers or even special units who know how to deal with children engaged in acts prohibited by criminal law. Specialized children courts also exist in all regions of the world. Moreover, reforms have been undertaken worldwide to ensure effective procedural safeguards for children. For example, access to a lawyer and free legal aid, adequate information, and the right to be heard in all proceedings. A broad range of diversionary and non-custodial measures, including restorative justice, exist worldwide that should be extended, ensuring that they are always used in a lawful and proportionate manner, are gender appropriate, and accessible to all children without discrimination and always in the best interest of the child.
So what would we consider most important recommendations? We would say thinking big and bold. Firstly, thinking big. No child exists in isolation, but always in an environment, together with family, peers, community, society at large. Prevention of detention must be seen as a cooperative effort, not just as a matter of the justice sector. This is why a systems approach is necessary, which includes family and community support services, social assistance, child protection, the schools, the health sector, for an enabling protective environment with interagency cooperation. There is a need to have holistic systemic approaches ranging from law reform, capacity building and training, to public information and involvement of children in policy development. Secondly, thinking bold. The global study has shown that imprisonment, detention for punishment does not work, does not improve life perspectives for children, nor strengthen cohesion in societies. The study advocates for a radical paradigm shift away from detaining children for punishment, a comprehensive strategy to replace detention by non-custodial measures. There might be situations where children pose particular security risks to themselves or others, which may justify deprivation of liberty on an exceptional basis. But there should be no justification for detention of children because of, for instance, petty crimes or status offenses, for the lack of availability of non-custodial measures for deprivation of childhood. Thank you.